So good afternoon and welcome to the University of Toronto Mississauga's online event on how to write a compelling personal statement for graduate or professional school. My name is Kristen Lovell and I'm the Director of Alumni Relations here at the University of Toronto Mississauga. We have students and alumni from all over the world watching today's event, from China, Saudi Arabia, Singapore, Thailand, Israel, India, Qatar, Iran, Malaysia, Pakistan, Brazil, and all across Canada and the United States. And if I missed your country, I apologize. And I'm not able to name all the cities in Canada. There's just way too many. So I'm just Canada globally. Welcome, everyone. Today's session, it's held in partnership with UTM's Career Center, and it's one of a few sessions we offer every year in support of student and young alumni professional, personal, educational, and career development. Today's presentation will cover what you need to think about before writing your personal statement, how to make a personal statement stand out, how to get noticed as an applicant, and how to plan ahead. We'll also have an opportunity for a Q&A session after the presentation. Our speaker, Teo Salgado, is an alumnus of the University of Toronto Mississauga and the founder of VerveSmith, an education consultancy serving clients around the world. Teo has more than 20 years of experience in international student recruitment, admissions counseling, and alumni relations, and we're so pleased that he's here to present to all of you today. But before I turn the mic over to Teo, my colleague Peggy, who is a career counselor with UTM's Career Center, would like to say a few words. Over to you, Peggy.
Thank you. Nice to meet everybody virtually. Hope you're doing well and that you're staying safe. And I hope that your school year so far is good and you're coping with our new reality right now. So yes, my name is Peggy. I'm a career counselor at the Career Center. And I just wanted to share some of our resources and workshops that we offer to students who are graduating and who will graduate at the end of this year. So the first one is the Road to Graduate School. If you're interested in going to grad school, this workshop can help you reflect on whether grad school is right for you and what you need to consider before making a decision and what you need to do to apply to grad school. We also offer the Road to Graduate School for psychology students. So that's tailored more for psychology students. But again, it helps you to reflect on your goals, how to apply, and some questions that you might need to ask yourself before applying to grad school. Our Careers in Law alumni panel was October 21st, and that's going to give you a chance to meet lawyers who are practicing law right now. They'll give you insights into a career in law and offer you other ideas about what you can do with your law degree, and it'll also give you an opportunity to talk to them and to hear about their own career journey. The final one is Now That I'm Graduating, What's Next? So that's offered 3 times a month. It's for students who are about to graduate and for students who aren't sure what to do next. So that workshop can help you with deciding what you want to do, preparing your marketing material for looking for work, such as your resume and your cover letter, looking for that hidden job market, and learning how to conduct interviews with professionals. We can offer that to you, and you can find that on the CLNX. As I said, it's offered 3 times a month. Next. So if you're interested in going to grad school, you're going to have to probably prepare a personal statement. So a lot of students have trouble getting started with that. So this workshop will help you get started, things that you need to think about in terms of your experience and your education, and to help you to think critically about how to write a good personal statement. If you can't go to the workshop or webinar, you can also use our personal statement e-module, which is found on the Career Center website. And you'll find it under links for further education, and that can give you a head start. And once you've done this, either go to the personal statement workshop or do the e-module, you can get your statement critiqued by a career counselor, and you can do that at least 4 times. So we also offer a lot of information about professional schools, med school, law school, is teaching in your future. A lot of students have questions about that. So these workshops are really great if you're interested in certain areas. We also provide mock interviews for you when you're if you're lucky enough to get an interview. So that's easily arranged through phoning the Career Center department and asking for a mock interview. And that usually takes about half an hour for you to do that. The Graduate School and Professional School Fair, that attracts over 100 schools from all over Canada. It was held yesterday, but it's also held every year in September. So some of you may want to go next year. It just gives you an opportunity to talk with reps from a diverse number of schools and gives you like that one-on-one opportunity to ask your questions that you need answered. And it's a great way for you to connect with the reps and to, really have good conversations that day with school reps. And I just wanted you to know also that you can use our services for 2 years after you graduate. So once you graduate, we're not abandoning you. We're here for you. We often see students up to 2 years after they graduate, so that's great. Sometimes they're more ready for our services at that time because they've been out in the workforce a little longer and have more questions and more concerns. We can offer one-on-one counseling with a career counselor, or you can meet with an employment strategist to help you with your job search. And again, we're always available to critique your resume and cover letter and provide you with mock interview assistance. So please connect with us. Visit us at UTM Career Center. You can call us to make an appointment. All our appointments are virtual right now, but we're seeing a lot of students. And we're doing really well with one-on-one Zoom meetings. And please do make that appointment. We'd be happy to meet with you.
Thank you so much, Iggy. Thank you so much. So now I'm just going to stop sharing my screen and pass it over to Teo.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Kristen and Peggy. And it really is a pleasure to be asked once again to present on this topic. As a student at U of T Mississauga, I was really fortunate to have developed friendships with two professors who mentored me through the process. Incidentally, Professors Eitan and Raby both provided reference letters in support of my grad school applications. And over the years, I've come to learn that this kind of mentorship that I had as an undergraduate at the University of Toronto is uncommon. And that this year, because of the distance between you and your faculty, a lot of relationships happening online, it's getting a little bit tougher to get the kind of advice that I was fortunate to have as a student at U of T Mississauga. So my hope is to offer you some of the same advice that they offered me. And when we first started our discussion, I didn't really understand it at the time, but I recall my first discussion with Professor Eitan just outside the Kneff Center, where his office was located. And the first question that he asked me was why I wanted to pursue graduate studies in political science. And because he knew me well, I really found the question to be strange. But thinking back now, over 20 years later, it really makes much more sense to me today. There are good reasons for pursuing graduate studies, and some of those reasons are, whether you have a passion for a narrow topic or an unusual combination of topics. And that was one of the first things that he asked me. He wanted to know what it was that I wanted to study within the discipline of political science. And the other thing you want to know is are you going to school for the right reasons? Are you going because you like it, because you're good at it? Do you enjoy doing research? Also, sometimes students will choose to go to study in a graduate program because the vocation that they're interested in pursuing requires them to do a graduate degree in order to progress in their career. Sometimes, many of the students, certainly that I'm seeing through my current practice, will start pursuing graduate programs because they're looking for better pay. Or maybe because they want to ensure continued career advancement. So, and at other times, students are looking for a little bit of a switch, and maybe what they're looking for is just, a more fulfilling life. So they want to make a career switch. So those are some of the good reasons to consider going into graduate school. At the same time, there are some bad reasons to choose to go to graduate school. And, I saw a couple of students ask this kind of questions. There were a couple of questions that were submitted in advance of this webinar. And a couple of people asked, they were undecided and they were thinking about whether they should be applying to graduate school. Well, if you're undecided about what you want to study, then you probably want to take a little bit of extra time right now to consider whether, what it is that you want to do eventually, and to give more thought to what it is that you're going to dedicate 1 or maybe 2 years of your life as a graduate student. You also don't want to go into a graduate program or a professional program because you want to please someone else, right? Maybe you feel a little bit of pressure from parents, siblings, family, that are encouraging you to apply to a graduate program. But it takes a lot of work to do graduate work, to do professional studies. And you have to be all in order to succeed in this kind of programs. So you want to make sure that you're doing it because you are truly interested in the study, not because you're looking to please somebody else. And it's very common right now when job prospects are uncertain, because of the pandemic, that people are looking for something to do, something to fill their time. And you don't want to jump into a graduate or professional program simply because the job prospects are uncertain. You want to make sure that you have a really good sense of what it is that you want to do before you jump into it. So,
Hey,
yes.
there's just a clicking noise around your microphone.
Oh, is that right?
Something must be.
Okay.
It's probably hitting a button or something.
Oh, all right. Let me see if I can. Is that better?
Yeah, that's good. It wasn't terrible. I was just letting you know.
Thank you. That also gave you an opportunity to take a little bit of a water break.
There you go.
Yeah, it must be the button. So, proper career planning really requires deep consideration and reflection. You don't want to jump into more education simply because you want or need to have something to do. It's normal to be undecided or uncertain at this point in your life. According to Donald Super's 5-stage theory of career development, from the early teens to about the mid-20s, people are at the exploration stage. This is the stage when you're deepening your interest, you're learning about the skills that you have, maybe getting to understand, what your values are. And you also start to pursue career goals that are consistent with that understanding. So some of the things that you need to be thinking at this point are, when were you most excited about your studies? What about your studies excited you, right? That can really help you understand what direction you may want to go into. What career would you do for free or little pay? I mean, one of the things that I loved when I was working at U of T, and I never really let my bosses know that, but it was that I really would have done it for free, right? I enjoyed what I was doing there. And to be honest, I enjoy what I'm doing today too. And I would gladly do it for free. And it's just a joy for me to do this. So when you're doing things that you really enjoy, you're studying things that you enjoy, it doesn't feel like work. And I think that that's when you really have good alignment between, what you value and the work that you're doing. And it makes it easier to get up in the morning. It makes it easier to stay up late at night to do a little bit of extra work. So, I encourage you to really think about those things that motivate you and that make you want to get up in the morning to learn more. The other thing is that the graduate or professional school process is very different from what you experienced in your senior year of high school. You're going to be juggling a lot as you go through this process. You have personal statements, there's reference letters that you need to get. You may have to do standardized testing. Those are very common features of the application process. So there are very many moving parts. And it's really important to give this a lot of thought and to get organized as soon as possible. In some cases, particularly when you're applying to more selective or limited enrollment programs, you may be required to secure support from a supervising faculty member at the university that you're applying to. So, that's going to require extra work on your part. So that means that, you're going to need to establish an academic connection, something that is very difficult to do at the last minute. So really, when you're planning to do your graduate studies, you need to plan well in advance. There are 3 maxims when applying to graduate schools or professional programs. The fit and the match really trump grades and scores. I know that we get really nervous or anxious around when we start thinking about applying to universities or to graduate programs, and you start focusing on the grades or the test scores that you have. But in many cases, really what is more important is the match between you and the program that you're applying to. And it also really helps to think about, what is it that you want to do specifically? but you also want to at the same time remain flexible, right? And later in this presentation, I'm going to show you an example of a statement that was written by a student that highlights that he was really certain about what he wanted to do, but at the same time, he let the university know that he was flexible on what the expected outcomes for him were. And the other thing is that showing the capacity that you have to do the work. And I mean, not just by showing the grades or the test scores that you've attained, but what else have you done outside of the classroom? Plus passion for a topic or an area of study really does lead to admission. And in fact, if you're thinking about getting a book to help you with this process, I really recommend Graduate Admission Essays by Donald Asher. It's very easy to get through Amazon or any other online providers.
Hey, Teo. Sorry.
Yes.
It's not the whole time. It hits something and then it will click while you're talking. I'm so
okay.
sorry.
So no problem. So I'll try to hold it like this.
Perfect.
Okay, great. So so what is the answer? Before, when you're thinking about, what is the answer to that question that you're being asked by the prompts in personal statements? Before writing, spend some time looking at what you have to work with, right? Ask questions about yourself. What are those things that interest you? What are your goals? What is it like to be you? And, think about what your strengths and weaknesses are. And make sure that you read the question. It's very common in the work that we do to find that sometimes a student gets started and maybe they think they're going in the direction where they're answering the question, but then somewhere along the way they lose their way and get sidetracked and don't necessarily answer the question. So you want to make sure that you answer the questions. One of the things, so I'm going to show you in the next two slides a couple of questions that I've seen come up from some of the students that we've worked with. And one of the things that you'll notice is that the prompts normally ask you to link past experiences to future goals, right? And it really applies whether you're applying to graduate programs or professional programs, right? From clinical psychology to political science to law school. One of the things that you'll find that's very common in the prompts is that they're asking you to link, what you have done with what you plan to do. So for example, U of T Mississauga's Management of Innovation program, they want to know why you're interested in the program. And they also want to know how the program fits your career goals. Right? I had a student apply to the public administration program at NYU. And, sometimes you'll find that universities will give you a quote, something that was said by a person that has been very important in the history of the institution. And they might ask how your thinking or your values, your experiences and accomplishments align with the thought or the sentiment that was expressed in the quote. But again, right, it's what have you done? And how does this relate to what you plan to do with your studies in this program? Stanford's Design Impact Program. You'll find this especially when you're applying to a program that is so niche that it really requires you to understand what it is that they're trying to offer. And in this case, they wanted to know, do you really understand what design impact is, right? And then they want to know, once you get in this program, what are you going to do? And how does it align with what you have done and what you plan to do in the program, right? So, you start to see a trend that whether you're applying to a professional program or an academic program, the questions are always going to be the same. Who are you? What have you done? And how does this step that you plan to take help you get where you want to go? McGill's Business School for the MBA program, they want to know about a challenge that you've faced and that you've overcome. Why? Because the way that you have overcome challenges in the past are a very good signal of how you're likely to face and overcome challenges in the future. The other thing that you'll notice is that for the most part, the statements tend to be about 500 words, so 2 pages, right? So you have to be very concise in the way that you express, you know, all of these things that they're asking you to do. So there's very little room for fluff. You have to get right into it. Again, you know, the second question that Desautels is asking is, what are your career goals? So they really want to understand that. And then they want to understand why you're applying to this program and how it aligns with your goals. So, you know, what are some of the characteristics that universities are looking for? Well, you know, if you've done any kind of interview prep, it's the same kind of adjectives, right? They're looking for people who are creative, problem solvers, tenacious, right? These are all the kind of qualities that are going to help you succeed in a professional program, in a graduate program, right? You have to be self-motivated. You have to be really interested and passionate in whatever it is that you're interested in doing. So what you want to do when you're preparing to write your essays or your personal statements is really think deeply about what you think it is that, you know, will help you succeed in the program, right? It's very tempting to take a look at a question and to jump right into answering the questions. It's really important to first take some time to brainstorm, to identify those qualities and values that you want to highlight in the statement and that you feel are going to show why you would be the better candidate for this program over the others that are also applying to the program, right? So these are some of the things that you might want to highlight. And those are just examples. I mean, there are very many others, but that was just some of the things that you might want to think about. So the other thing that you'll find that you need to do in this essay is, you know, you really want to think about who has influenced your thinking, right? What is it and how does it align with the program that you're applying to? So you might want to reference some thinkers or articles in the field that you're applying to that influenced the development of your thinking. Who are your favorite professors? Why were they your favorite professors, and how maybe did their thinking also influence your approach to the discipline? If you have an essay that you wrote, you might be asked to submit a writing sample, right? So now's a good time to maybe start polishing up those essays that you submitted in the past to maybe catch those little mistakes that you didn't have time to catch the first time around. But those essays can also highlight, you know, your thinking for the program and show a little bit of how you've developed academically. The other thing you might want to consider is, you know, what is the single most important concept that you've learned at university? Because that might be something that could lead you in the direction of whatever it is that you want to research as part of this program. Motivations are really important, right? The programs really want to understand, you know, how is it that you've come to apply to this program? Right? What are some of those things that motivated you to become interested in the area of study that you want to pursue? And maybe you can talk about, you know, what work experiences or what volunteer experiences contributed to your interest in this specific area of study. One of the questions that we got in advance was, you know, is it important to have done a lot of extracurricular activities? Well, it depends on the program that you're applying to. It depends on how you're positioning yourself as an applicant. There's always ways that you can get around those things, and that's part of what you do with these essays. You try to address weaknesses by facing them head on. But one of the things that you really can do if you have a lot of experience is to highlight those and how they have contributed to your interest in the program. You know, what extracurricular activities? So beyond just the things that you've done academically, right? There may be other things. It might be things that you've done with your family, or maybe it was some volunteer work that you did, or maybe it's a hobby that you have that kind of led you to go in the direction of the program that you're going to. In some cases, it could even be the family. Like, you know, there might be some influence from the family, and you'll see this later in the essay that I'm going to share with you in a couple of slides, that sometimes family can play a choice in the interest in studying whatever it is that you're applying to. And of course, you want to talk about your academic background, right? You're applying to a program that's going to require you to perform at a high level, right? It's much more focused than your undergraduate studies were. So you have to show how you are prepared for this next step that you're taking. You want to be able to show, what relevant body of knowledge influenced you, but also, that you've taken on board and are going to be able to share in class discussions with your peers. So if you're applying to a program that requires knowledge of lab work, right, you want to be able to show that you've developed some laboratory skills. What have you done to prepare you for success in the program? And as I showed earlier in that earlier slide where I showed those qualities that you want to highlight, you'll also want to show, some of those personal qualities that will help you succeed in the program. You also want to be prepared to name drop. You do have to be careful with how you do this. There's elegant ways and not so elegant ways to do it. But one of the things that you want to do is you want to show who your influences are, right? Who has shaped your thinking. So one of the things that you might want to start doing today is thinking about maybe 2 professors outside of U of T that maybe have influenced you. Maybe it was at a conference that you attended, or perhaps it's some reading that you've done for class, right? But think about those people that have influenced you along the way, in addition, of course, to professors at the University of Toronto. Do any of those professors teach at the target school, at the universities where you're applying? Because, if they do, it might be worthwhile mentioning that that's maybe one of the reasons why you're attracted to the program. If in fact it is, of course, you always want to be authentic. And you also want to show that you have a good sense of the literature in your field, that you have an understanding of, where things are headed or where things have come from, to show that mastery of the area that you're going to study. And again, you do want to consider your future, right? What is it that what have you been doing to prepare for graduate applications? So this year, if you have a chance, maybe take a course that allows you to complete a thesis, right? That's one of my biggest regrets as an undergrad, is that I had the chance in 4th year to take a thesis, to do a thesis project, and I passed on it. In part because I was doing a lot of things with student government and I felt that I couldn't handle the workload, but I really, really regretted it because it would have made my life easier when I was applying to graduate programs, because I would have had something that was supervised by a professor that was nicely polished and I felt good about submitting. Believe me, when I was applying, I was a little bit anxious because I wasn't sure that the papers that I was submitting were up to the level of what I wanted. I mean, they were fine, but there was always that nagging sense of doubt. And if you have a chance to, for those of you maybe that are a little bit younger, not yet in your senior year, and are thinking about applying to graduate or professional programs, think about opportunities to present your work at a conference or meeting, right? To show that you're contributing to the body of knowledge by discussing this with peers. And then, of course, you always want to consider, as I showed you in the questions earlier, you always want to consider what your goal is and how this step that you want to take is aligning with that goal that you're setting. So, and you want to be able to explicitly explain how graduate school is going to help you achieve that goal. So the next thing that I want to do is I want to show you an example of an essay that was written by a student of mine, and this is probably the second to last draft of the essay, because he submitted it. I made some suggestions. He made some edits, and then he submitted the essay. Eventually, this student who studied at U of T Mississauga and did some really wonderful work at the university. He was admitted to Georgetown, Johns Hopkins, Toronto, where else? Yale, which is actually where he ended up going with a full scholarship. George Washington University, and he was just like very, very highly recruited as a student by these universities. So, the question that he answered with this statement was related to his application to Yale, and they wanted him to describe his research interest, preparation for the field. So again, that experience that you have, and then how this aligned to his future goals. So I've just highlighted some of the words there that I felt were important, for him to address in the essay. So I mentioned to you earlier that, getting personal is okay in these personal statements. In the case of this student, what he did was he talked about his family experience with the fall of the Berlin Wall and the impact that that had on Georgia, where he came from, the transformation after the collapse of the Soviet Union. So he talked about a very personal experience that he had there. One of the things that he also does, because he moved to Canada in 2015, and when he was transitioning here, one of the things that happened to him was he wasn't used to contributing to classroom discussions. It wasn't something that was very common where he was from. So his grades in that first year of university weren't exactly the best. They were strong, but they weren't to the level that he could have performed. So one of the things that he wanted to do through the essay was to address that, right? And he didn't say, anything about, I had bad grades because, right? But what he did was he just very nimbly mentioned that the transition to Canada was not easy for him. And he briefly explained why it wasn't easy, and it had to do with mindset. The other thing that he talks about is that, eventually he became more confident. He kind of understood how things worked. He gained confidence, and he became more proactive. And then what he talks about is how he used that newfound confidence to benefit the community, right? So one of the things that universities want to know is, how are you going to make the place that you plan to attend better for others? And so he mentioned things like, working with other students who maybe were having similar difficulties as he was, so that he can help them navigate those transitions. And then he talked about something a little bit more on the academic side, where he went back to Georgia and he started working on educating people on free market ideas. Then he went back to the academic bit. And he talked about, a course that he took that he felt really influenced the direction in which he wanted to take his studies. And then he references a 30-page policy paper that he wrote, right, related to what he wants to study at the universities where he was applying. And he also submitted that paper as a sample, so that, if the faculty or the staff that are reading the application were able to see a sample of his writing. Then he goes on to talk about his personal interests and some of the things that he did to apply the research skills that he had gained through that class, and how that is what he wants to continue doing at university. Then he talks about, what he did on his spare time. Right? So again, you don't have to tell people that you're motivated or that you're really interested and passionate about something. You want to show it, right? And the way that he showed it was by stating that, he spent a summer learning about European and Russian history, right? And he references some of the people that he was reading and that are now influencing his research interests, right? So this is one of the ways that this student has just kind of like covered some of the big names that people will want to know, that you know and that you understand, that will prepare you very well for success in this type of program. And then he goes back to the personal, right? And how a reflection on a family experience really shaped his interest in continuing to study in this area. So, and then he turns it back again, away from academics, back to some of the independent stuff that he's done outside of the classroom, some of those experiences that have prepared him for success in research by doing work as an intern, where he was doing self-directed research, right? And that's what you're going to do a lot of if you're doing graduate work. A lot of it is independent work. So he's showing that he has the qualities to succeed in this type of a program. I've taken out some of the references that I thought might help you identify who the student was, but there were professors' names in there. And then what he did was he got a reference from one of those professors, actually from two of the professors referenced here, who can attest to the claims that he's making in the personal statement. Then he also participated in the research opportunity program, right? Where he worked with another professor, and he credits that to helping him improve his research and writing skills. So you can see how all of this is leading him to show how he is ready for success in this type of program. Then he talks about some of the faculty that he wants to read, or that got him interested in the program to which he was applying, right? So he starts being a little bit more specific about why he wanted to be admitted to this particular program, and how some of the people there were part of the reason that he was interested in attending, right? And how their research can really help him develop his thinking further. So, and then I mentioned earlier that flexibility, specificity, and flexibility are important when you're applying to these programs. You don't want to be so dogmatic that you say, this is what I'm there to do, and if I don't do that, I'm not going to be pleased with your program, right? You want to show that that you have an idea of what you want to do, but that you're open to change. So one of the things that he did was he again explained that his goals are to potentially do doctoral studies, or maybe to go in as a policy analyst after completing this first degree. And his long-term goal is to advise government, right? So, and then he goes on to highlight how this specific program will help him succeed, right? So I hope that by showing you this example, that you were able to get a sense for, how you can show that you have the qualities as well as the experience to be successful in the types of programs that you need. And again, you have to know that you understand the program that you're applying to, so that they know that this isn't just an application that you submitted on a lark, right? This is something that you really gave a lot of thought to, and that truly aligns with your progression as an academic or as a professional. So, this is something that you've done before. You can definitely do it. Instead of writing about a literary figure like you did in English, or maybe English class in high school, or maybe as you've done throughout your university studies, you're writing about yourself, right? The responses are going to be very similar. There's a structure, a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? So the structure could be something like this. First, you have a hook, right? Introduce yourself and explain why you want to go to the grad school. So in the same way that this student, talked about his family's experiences, and that was the hook. Here's why I'm an interesting person. Here's why I'm motivated to come to your program. Then there's the substance, right? Explain your knowledge in the field and highlight other relevant experience that will help you succeed in the program. Then there's the future. Explain why this program, aligns with your future goals, and briefly describe your goals. You want to make sure as you're doing this that you focus on a single point and that you stick to it, right? And describe, some insights into yourself along the way. You do want to be specific, so you don't want to give broad answers, right? You want to provide details in the same way that this example did. You want to make sure that you demonstrate that you have really researched the program and that you really understand how this program is going to help you achieve your goals. And you want to find commonalities between your goals and the philosophy of the program or the school, right? It's kind of like a love letter in a sense, right? You want to show why you are good for each other. So it's not just, I want to get in. It's more about like, I want to get in because I can contribute in the following ways, and the community is going to benefit, and I'm going to benefit in this way from the program as well, right? And don't focus too much on just listing a lot of things, right? It's more about, giving a lot of detail on those things that really are relevant for the program to which you are applying, right? So, it's really important that you maybe find those things that you really want to show through the essay. So, think of a theme. Why are you going to write this statement? What is the overall message that you want to convey? Is it your passion? Is it, that motivation that you have for studying, right? You want to make sure that you have an overall theme that you highlight through your writing. I think, that we're at about 12:42 or so, and I want to make sure that we leave a little bit of time for questions and answers. Kristen, did you want me to pause at this point, or do I have a little bit more time?
No, I think you've got a little more time.
Okay, perfect. So, I have some bonus slides, and these are some of the things that you should do. If you're always going to have to submit reference letters, you want to make sure that you schedule appointments with professors, right? Don't just catch them, in the hallway and, drop the bomb on them that you want a reference letter, right? Make sure that you let them know why it is that you want to meet. Maybe even let them know which universities or programs you're applying to, and that you need a reference letter. Make sure that you're asking professors that you know very well. And if you're starting late, don't be disappointed if a professor is unable to write a reference letter for you. I mean, one of the things that we know is that professors that are popular are probably the ones that are going to be asked a lot, right? So you want to make sure that you get to the front of the line, because sometimes it's not so much about you. It could be just that they've been asked so often, so many times, to do things on top of their personal lives, right? Other commitments that they have, that they just, as much as they want to accommodate you, they're just unable to. You also want to make sure that you brief them properly, right? Provide a resume or a list of activities. It's a really good preparation anyway for the applications, because often you're required to submit a resume or a CV. So you should have this ready anyway, but it's also a good way to give the professor a sense of, why you would be a good candidate for the programs that you are applying to. And as much as possible, maybe, give them some samples of the work that you've done in their classes or class, because it allows them to then maybe reference some of those things when they're writing the reference letters. And if the program that you're completing requires an admission interview, know that the interview starts well before the meeting. Right? It really requires you to do a lot of preparation. You don't want to go into the meeting to recite your resume. You don't want to restate the essay responses. You want to show them something else, right? You really need to think about how this bit of the application is going to dovetail with some of the other things that you've said, or maybe weren't able to say because there wasn't enough space in the first set of questions that you had for the interviews, for the personal statements. And you also, if possible, if the interview format allows, make sure that you're asking meaningful questions of the interviewers. If you can Google and find the response, then it's not a meaningful question. Make sure that you prepare for that interview. Okay. Perfect. I think that brings me to the end of the presentation, and I guess now we'll open it up for Q&A.
Great. Thanks so much, Teo. So we've had a few questions come in. So first question, this is from Maria. She's asking, is it possible to work and go to grad school at the same time, or is it too time consuming?
Well, I guess it really depends on the student's the type of work that the student is doing, the ability of the student to balance her time. Generally, I think it's very difficult, especially if you're doing a full-time program. I think students should see this as their full-time job. In some cases, I know that it's something that you just have to do. It's going to take a lot of effort. But it really is it's a personal thing. So I think it's something that they have to think about very deeply, and maybe discuss it with faculty that right? Because they'll have much more better insight than I have, in this forum to give you a very precise response. But I think it's difficult, and because really, I think that graduate or professional school, if it's full time, it's a full time job.
Makes sense. Thank you. So we have a question from Cassia, and this is actually coming from a few different people. She's asking, is a statement of intent for grad schools the same or similar to a personal statement?
Yeah, it really depends on the way that the school phrases it. Sometimes the statement of intent might be more specific to what it is that you want to accomplish through the program, and it might be more academic in nature. But generally, I think that there's alignment, because you can talk about your intent in the program and still talk about some of those other things that you want to address about why you are a good candidate for the program. So it really depends on how the school is using that phrase and what the questions are ultimately. Ultimately, it's what the question is that matters the most, not so much what they call it.
Yeah. So we have a question from Alexandre. He says, when is the right time and how comfortable should we be with a prof to request a reference letter from them?
Right. Well, again, this is one of those hard to say, but generally, I think if you've never talked to the professor, if the professor doesn't know your name, then probably not a good idea to ask, even if you've gotten an A, right, in that class, because what is the professor really going to be able to say about you?
Yeah.
Right. And that really is the important thing. So I think, for those students that are on, or those alumni that are on here today, if you've established a relationship with the professor, make sure that you continue it. Keep in touch with them after you've had that class. I always recommend that students take more than one class with a faculty member before asking for a reference letter, because then they're able to talk about a little bit about your progression as a student, right?
Mm-hmm.
They can evaluate you, how you've changed, how you've evolved from one year to the next. And at this stage in your lives, there's a lot of change that happens in a very short period. So I think, it really depends. But if this professor doesn't know your name, then probably not a good idea.
Thanks. So we have some questions that came in advance as well. And one of them is, how long is too long to wait before applying for grad school after finishing your bachelor's?
Right.
For example, taking a break for work.
Yeah, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I mean, in some cases, MBA programs might require you to take a break, right? In some cases, some programs encourage you to have at least 2 years of experience prior to applying to the program. There's other programs, especially the more selective, or some of the ones that really encourage class discussion, and where they find that their students benefit from discussion in the classroom. They might want you to have upwards of 5 to 7 years of experience. So it really depends on the program that you're applying to. I think on the other side too is on the personal side. It really depends on how motivated you are and how self-disciplined you are. Because sometimes, when you step away from school, it's very easy to find it harder to go back, right? Because now you're making money, and if you're going back to a full-time program, your lifestyle is going to change potentially drastically. Right? So some students find it hard to make that transition back to student life. The other thing is, you'll often hear that sometimes you lose a sense of the state of the art, where things are in the discipline that you're applying to. So if you're applying to a discipline that changes a lot, I'm thinking about the sciences, right? Maybe not staying away too long is a good idea, because there's so many changes that can happen quickly. So it really depends on what the student is applying to, as well as some of those personal things, like motivation, discipline, that can impede success later, or just, the propensity to want to go back.
Makes sense. Before I ask the next question, I need to get you to hold your microphone. That darn button on your shirt.
Button. I can see your eyes, and I'm hoping that she's not looking at me because of that. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. It happens. So we have a question from Elle. She says, some programs require you to connect with potential supervisors in the grad program you're applying for. Do you have any recommendations on templates or how to reach out and tell potential supervisors that you're interested in them?
Yeah. Not so much templates, but again, you have to understand the program. You want to be able to explain what experience you have. So it's almost like you need to do this thinking that you're going to do for the personal statement, and really think about why you would be a good candidate for the program. You start selling yourself at that point. So you want to be able to explain, what you offer the program, and also why the program is good for you, right? And why that professor's specific research is of interest to you, and how you might be able to contribute to the work that they're doing, right? So yeah, it's really important to get started on that early. It's really hard, if you have deadlines that are due in December or January, to do that in the fall. Because at this point, faculty are teaching, they're doing their research, they're just juggling so many balls, right? That it's really hard to do. So I think, the best times to do this is really if you're attending conferences, maybe meeting a professor there, or connecting with them well in advance, maybe in the summer months when they have a little bit more free time, and are able to really dedicate the attention to a prospective student rather than their current students.
Thanks. So this question's from Anaya. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. It's another question on timing. So she's in third year and she wants to ask her prof this year about a reference letter. But is it okay to, ask a year before graduating to start talking to your prof?
Yeah, I don't think it's bad to put that bug in their ear. The way that I would do it is maybe just approach them and ask them, what you just mentioned to them, that you're interested in graduate school, that you've been thinking about it, and maybe you just ask them about their experiences in graduate programs, to try to get a sense to just let them know in a very subtle way that this is, what you're thinking about doing next, right? The professor might just take you on as a mentee at that point, right? If they have the time, and are able to do that. And then I would think that maybe at the end of this year, so that they have the summer to think about it, would be a good time. I don't think this early on, because put the bug in there, but I think it might be a little bit early to start asking for a reference letter. And I think if you are thinking of doing that, then maybe consider taking another course with that professor in second semester, right? So that you can deepen that relationship with the professor as well.
Makes sense. I have a question from Henia, and she's asking if you can request reference letters from sessional instructors.
I think you can, but the question is how strong is that reference letter going to be? I think that part of the value of asking, a professor that has been around for very many years, that maybe is tenured, is that they're probably known by faculty at other universities, right? They may have met at conferences. So that there'll be a lot of weight behind the reference letter that person can give you. The other thing that they could do is, if they've been teaching for a long time, is that they would be able to give some context to how strong a student they feel you are in terms of like all of the students that they've taught over the last 10 years, 15 years, right? So that kind of strengthens the reference that they're giving. So, if it's the only option that you have, yes, it's fine. But, do I think that that's the best reference that you could get? Well, it depends on whether you've had the opportunity to be taught by other professors. But I would say, always better to get a reference letter from somebody who's been around longer, and ideally that's tenured.
Thank you. Another question that was emailed in, if you're applying to grad school in Canada, is it beneficial to add work experience from another country, or is only Canadian experience good?
No, I mean, think of it this way. There are international students in a lot of the programs that you're applying to, right? So the international experience is just as valuable, right? It's, what's really important is what did you learn as a result of the experience, and how is that experience going to help you succeed in this program, right? So where you did it is not as important as what you got out of the experience.
That makes sense. So that's all we have time for today, unfortunately. And there are a few more questions. So I'm really sorry, everyone. This has just been, it's been very exciting. So I really appreciate you coming on today, Teo. So I just wanted to let everyone know that after today's event, you'll receive a post-event email with links to the resources that Peggy mentioned at the beginning of the session. And you'll also receive a link to an event survey. And we do hope you take a couple minutes just to complete it, as your feedback is really helpful so that we can plan our future events. As Peggy mentioned, there'll be a Careers in Law alumni panel on October 21st. It's at 5 p.m. And the link to this event was also posted in the Q&A by Melissa. It'll also be posted on the CLNX this week, and an invite will be sent to everyone by email. So Teo, on behalf of UTM tongue twister. On behalf of UTM Alumni Relations and the Career Center, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. And thank you so much to our audience. We really look forward to hosting everyone. And Teo, we look forward to hopefully having you back as well.
Yeah, I'd love that. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon.